right to the clerk's call of the roll.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Commissioners Skaggs.
Here.
Wooden.
Here.
Womack. Bulkowski.
Present.
LeGrand.
Here.
Hennessy.
Here.
McLeod.
Here.
Sparks.
Present.
Teal.
Here.
Vice Chair Brevy.
Here.
Commissioners Coleman. Burl.
Here.
Ponstein. Bolter. Jones.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
Antor.
Here.
Green. Chair Steck.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 14 members present, 5 absent. You have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. I will now call on Commissioner Wooden for the invocation.
Thank you, Chair Steck. I'm pleased to have here today to offer invocation Fred Stella. He is the Pracharak, or Outreach Minister for the West Michigan Hindu Temple. While they meet in Cascade Township, Fred himself is a resident of the formidable 18th District, but will no longer be a constituent of the 18th due to redistricting. So I lose him as a constituent, but I keep him as a neighbor and friend. I'm excited to have him come up here and lead us in prayer. Fred?
Let's take just a moment to center ourselves and be open to inspiration. Let us acknowledge the one supreme presence that is manifest in many forms, the Spirit, which we often refer to as the divine, the Holy One, the sacred source, or simply God. Let us affirm that as business is conducted, as ideas are exchanged and decisions made, that everyone here is committed to the highest good for all concerned. May all exchanges of ideas be without rancor. May we be given the heart of a servant, offering all efforts without thought of personal reward, restraining ego, committed to right action. The Shanti Mantra, or peace prayer, comes from the Vedas, the foundational scriptures of Hindu Dharma, the oldest known scriptures in the world. Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu nirmaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, makashi dukkha bhagvavet, om shanti shanti shanti. May all be happy. May all be free from disease. May all realize what is good. May none be subject to misery. May peace prevail everywhere. Peace, peace, peace.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. We'll now move to our, our item special order of business, and starting with Jeff Dode and Steve Blahn, dealing with our annual financial report. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. So Stephen Bland is here to present our annual audit. So if I don't have any direct comments, he will take care of those. So.
It's the easiest presentation you've ever had.
We'll see if we can keep mine just about as easy. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I am Stephen Bland. I am the signing partner on the county's annual audit, and I'm going to give just a very quick overview of the process and the results, and then open it up to whatever questions that you may have for me this morning. So on an annual basis, the county's Fiscal Services Department puts together a comprehensive financial report covering all of the county's operations for the preceding 12 months. This annual comprehensive financial report is very detailed. It's over 250 pages long, and it includes a lot of different views of the county's operations. You have a diverse group of programs and activities and funds, and they're reflected through here both at an aggregated high-level perspective and a very detailed into-the-weeds perspective. There's a little something in here for everyone, though I don't imagine anyone would find all 250 pages useful to them as an individual. Once all this information is compiled, you as commissioners are faced with a decision of can you rely on the data that came from the Fiscal Services Department? And that's where our job comes in as your independent auditors. We bring in a team for a period of several weeks to review all of the books and records and to answer the question, is this financial picture, the picture that's painted in these books and records from the county's own information, is this an accurate or fairly presented picture of what actually happened? Having a clean audit, which you do, having a clean audit is not a measure of your financial health. It's a measure of the accuracy of the financial report that is put together by your Fiscal Services Department. That said, if you flip to the third tab, which is called the Independent Auditor's Report, we start off right in the first and second paragraph saying, in our opinion, these financial statements are fairly presented. This is a financial presentation that accurately reflects the results of operations. Now, it's important that I remind you of this, and many of you have heard this many years in a row, and you're probably tired of hearing it, but a financial statement audit by necessity involves a certain degree of sampling. We can't look at every single dollar of every single transaction that happens during the year. We have a very risk-based approach. We focus our effort where the likelihood of potential misstatements is highest, and through that, we are able to provide a very high level of assurance, but it's not absolute assurance. There's always the chance something small could slip through and not be caught in an audit. There's no reason to think that's happened, but it's a normal risk of the process, and I owe it to you to remind you of that on an annual basis. So, clean financial audit indicating we believe these financial statements are fairly presented. If you flip to page 36, you'll see a very high-level picture of the county's balance sheet at a government-wide level. And you'll see large amounts of cash and investments and a lot of other detail that all drives down to a bottom line net position of $520 million. Well, that number is really big, but it's hard to put it into context. And so we tend to budget and manage the county's operations on a fund-by-fund basis. So these government-wide statements are helpful for comparing between other governments, giving you a big picture, a little closer to how a business would operate, but still not quite. But if you're gonna flip a couple more pages to page 40 to start seeing the individual funds. And there we'll see the general fund broken out from the new fund set up for coronavirus grant relief, set aside from debt service and public improvement and a lot of other things that end up following. And the general fund ended in a very strong financial position for the year. Your unassigned fund balance, that is the no strings attached money available to you in the general fund, was almost $52 million, which is a very strong position, something like 38% of your annual budget. Speaking of budget, we can flip back to, it's the first tab labeled required supplementary information, so the very next one. And that shows how the county did in its general fund budget. You had planned to raise about $170 million and
So
beat
Steve,
that.
just so you know, we don't have the whole
Oh,
book.
I'm sorry,
So
I
when you
didn't
use a
realize you didn't
tab,
have.
it's a little bit hard for us to track.
Gotcha. All right, we're on page 134 then, if you're following along. Otherwise. Okay, you didn't get the full accurate. Well, the good news is this is on your own website, and it's on the state's website, so it is all available. But you don't even have to look at it, because the two things I'm going to point out are really good news, and it's super high level. You budgeted to bring in $170 million, you beat that. You budgeted to spend $144 million, you beat that by spending less. So for the year, you came out ahead almost $8 million better than you had budgeted. So fund balance went up in an otherwise tough year. Grant resources helped a lot. That's what all that coronavirus relief money was there for. So to recap, you don't have the numbers in front of you, that's great, you can look them up later. You get these all regularly from your Fiscal Services Department anyway, but here's the bottom line. The audit was clean, meaning we think these numbers are accurate. The general fund is up, you were under budget, and things ended well. The two other things that are in here, but I won't even point out what page they're on because you can't look at them anyway, is the status of your pension and other post-employment benefit plans. That's one of the key points the state watches a lot. They want to know if local governments have fund balance. You do, you're doing great on that. And they want to know if you have the resources to follow through on your commitments to employees when they retire. Can you meet the demands of your pension programs? And you are in a great shape on both of those. At the end of 2021, the main retirement plan was up to 108% funded. Now, that doesn't mean you have too much money. It just means you are a little further ahead of where your plan would have you at this point. You'll have to keep putting money in every year for a while, but you are not only on track, you're slightly ahead of track, which is wonderful news. Doesn't mean you have more than you need, you just have more than you needed to have as of today, which will help in future years. And on your VEBA, which is your other post-employment benefits, that has grown steadily. Across the state, we see other post-employment benefit plans being largely underfunded. And if we go back just 5 years, you were only 43% funded. That has grown steadily to the point where you're now almost 71% funded. Huge progress in just 5 years and getting caught up on that. So that is great news all the way around, and whether you can look at it or not, it's a good piece of information to receive. Now, that's all the financial stuff, and I know I glossed over it like, oh, it's just the financial stuff. That's the meat of a financial statement audit. But the report you do have, this smaller single audit, actually answers two really important questions to go with the financial statements. The first one is, how did you end up with a clean audit report? Is it because everything was messy and the auditors fixed it for you? Or is it because everything was clean and the auditors said, yeah, everything was exactly as it should be? And fortunately, it's that second thing. We came in to do the financial statement audit, and we did not have to propose material adjustments. We didn't find any systemic problems with the way the books were being kept. In fact, this single audit report shows, from a financial control perspective, 0 findings, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and even in the separate letter where we get to nickel and dime you with the little stuff, none of those. So all of last year's comments related to anything financial related have all been resolved and cleared. That is excellent news on the financial side. The other thing this report talks about is federal grants. And oh my goodness, in the land of COVID, have there been a lot of federal grants. You spent almost $52 million in federal grant money last year. Now, the county's always had grants, but this is a big uptick, and COVID is a huge reason. It's not the only reason, but it's a huge reason for that. Every year we pick one or more major programs. Those are the ones we do a deep dive in, and it rotates. We don't test every grant every year, and that's how the rules are set up. And normally we're going to test 3 or 4 programs a year. This year there were 8 programs that were big enough to get a deep dive. And we went into all of those very, very detailed. On this report, you actually have a nice executive summary back on page 17. You have page 17? Goes that high? Good. All right. We can go to page 17. This one shows you on one page the overall results of the audit. The very first line up there says unmodified. That means clean, so that's good. Your financial statement audit was clean. The next 3 lines say, were there any findings? No, no, no. That's all great stuff. Then we go down to the federal awards, and the question is, how did we do on those? So the 8 programs we did a deep dive on, 7 of them came out clean with an unmodified or clean opinion on them. 1 program did have a finding that we need to talk about or 2 findings actually, on the next 2 pages. But let's focus on how many of these programs, including all of those new COVID relief programs, got deep dive tested and came out clean. That's great news. So if you're interested in the details on the findings that we do have, they start on page 19. And one relates to subrecipient monitoring of housing programs. The feds put a lot of requirements on how, when you pass money through to other agencies, you monitor them. And you did pass through money through a number of programs. Only one of the programs did we find problems, and it wasn't in financial monitoring. The dollars and cents were all good, but there's programmatic monitoring that relates to looking at how actual programs are carried out, not from a fiscal perspective, but from an operations perspective. And in 2021, some of that required monitoring didn't occur. We talked it over with management. The county understands what needs to happen there, and a third party has actually been hired to assist with that process in 2022 that we're now in. So you have a corrective action plan already in action, and we'll follow up on that as part of the 2022 audit to make sure it actually occurred. On page 20, we have a very similar theme. It's a slightly different rule, so it ended up as a different finding number. And this one, we said it wasn't material. It's just a smaller item, but it relates to the certification of tenants to make sure they're eligible to receive benefits. Most of the tenants we tested were fine, but there was one that was identified that had not been picked up. Corrective action plan already in place to have that necessary inspection take place this year in 2022. And our final item was on page 21, another smaller finding. This one was not material, but it was a technical violation of the rules related to how certain reports have to be filed with the state of Michigan. We found that most of the reports that were filled out had some degree of clerical errors in them that led to some inaccurate reporting. That can be corrected and revised. Our recommendation going forward is to change the controls, the reviews. So after the forms are filled out, they get an independent set of eyes on them. And we understand management has already changed that system forward as well. So while by necessity, an audit always focuses on the negative, the 3 findings that are in here, you have to realize the context of what we're looking at. $50+ million of federal awards, many times more of that in terms of financial operations, and it was completely clean on finances, and we only had 1 material finding related to 1 grant that was related to operational matters that have now hired an outside consultant to help you in 2022. All in, I would say that was a very successful audit, and while I know we're going to continue to focus on improving further, I don't want to lose sight of how great of a year this really was. So that's my quick overview. You can quibble whether it was actually quick or not, but I'm going to stop and ask what questions you have for more information.
Great, thank you for that. Well, it was quick, here we go. Let's see, I think Commissioner Sparks, you were first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your work here. I just have a couple questions.
Sure.
Was this the program for the KCCA, the County Community Action Program?
It was in the Community Action Department, yes.
Okay, and how will that affect us going forward with HUD? Will there be any ramifications for getting more grants in the future?
What we have seen other places, and I obviously can't speak for federal agencies, but what we have seen frequently happens is if there is a finding identified and corrective action is taken within a timely manner, there are usually no lasting consequences. I can't rule out the possibility that HUD would act differently, but it would very much surprise me. As long as you do what's necessary, and you've already laid out a plan for that, I would not expect any long-term consequences from this.
Okay, and could this be, I'm looking at the time frame here, could we have maybe some grace because of COVID, because it looked like it happened during that time period?
And that's very much, I think, part of the qualitative factors you have to think about here. There are requirements to do monitoring on-site visits, and during COVID, a lot of that transitioned to virtual. A lot of people were unable to work because of personal health issues or family health issues. This is not isolated to Kent County. It doesn't change the rules, and it doesn't change the need to take corrective action, but I think it does provide a good context for a grantor agency to provide some grace, as you put it, in allowing corrective action to take its time.
Commissioner Morgan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
This is one part of the program I'm going to miss, is these audits. But I have to tell you, this is a pretty clean audit, all things considered. But the red flags for me over the years has been, once you get a management letter and you identify, do the repeat. And our conversation this morning is there were no repetitive non-compliance this year with this audit, which is important to me. The other thing is the separation of cash is real important to me, and grants, usually that comes in, so you have more than one set of eyes as we administer these grants.
Right.
And it's always been a challenge, but I think we have that handled. And now we have, in this department, we have an interim director, and we're going to be hopefully filling that position pretty soon. Al?
Thank you. And the interim director is tasked over about a 90-day period of doing a full review of all grants that we have.
Okay.
And putting that in a format that will be easy to report out on, and so we can keep better track of all that funding, where it's at.
And this is kind of an unusual year with all the grants that came in. I mean, just trying to stay on top of that. But I think pretty clean audit. Congratulations to the Fiscal Services Department for their record keeping. But I think if we keep our eye on the ball and see that, okay, so next year, let's look and see if these things are repetitive, and then we have an issue. But
And that's built into the auditing standards. So every year we follow up on anything that was raised in the prior year audit, and we too care very much about repeat findings. Delighted that there weren't any this year, and look forward to being able to report that again next year after we've seen these corrective actions have time to take effect.
so I guess just in summing this up, I have complete confidence in this audit. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Antor?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Thank you
Morning.
for the report. A quick question. You mentioned our pension. In the state, they keep an eye on this to make sure we're meeting all our obligations to keep it funded. Can you tell me what does the state do if you were to come in here and find that we were totally upside down on our audit? What happens with those municipalities that are not doing what we're doing?
In the absolute extreme, and it would not go to this step immediately, in the absolute extreme, you see whatever the current legal equivalent is of the old emergency manager law. That's a very extreme, but it all starts with looking for signs of fiscal distress. And so the state has identified a number of key metrics, fund balance, pension funding, and several others as well. Consistent overspending above what was in the budget, which was not a problem here at all. We were actually under budget in this report. And all of those trigger a kind of growing level of review and involvement from the Department of Treasury. The numbers you have are well above all of their screens. You wouldn't even be slightly on their radar with anything that was in this year's report.
So if municipality was upside down due to self-inflicted lack of diligence, let's just say, the state would step in and they would continue to monitor, or do they step in, do they make them right, or do they make them whole in some sort of funding move, or?
So there's a variety of actions that can be taken in those extreme cases. Sometimes it can be forcing prospective plan changes. It can be looking at pension obligation bonds to try to fund things. But you're in such a great position, we don't really have to
Yeah,
worry
I
about
don't
that
think,
here.
just wondering how that works if you.
Yeah, they passed a law a few years ago that makes certain mandatory contributions, things that you were voluntarily doing years before it became required, to try and get people headed in the right direction. And there are, of course, going to be a handful of governments out there that violate those laws, and then there has to be some kind of action taken to make that right. But again, doesn't apply here.
Yeah, and just I'm just making sure that we're never in a situation where we reward bad behavior, where somebody's broken.
Yeah, at this point, the state is not bailing out, providing new resources to address those kinds of concerns.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Jones?
Thank you, Chair. As Chair of the Finance and Physical Resources Committee, I have conversations as this goes on at the beginning with the audit team.
Right.
And one of the questions they always ask me is if I am aware of any fraudulent challenges or issues, and I'm not. And that was what I shared with them. The question that I had that they gave me is what area of focus that I have, and in the time I've sat in this position, I always ask about having them look at our receivables, making sure that the receivable component all checks out. Were there any comments on that?
There were no comments in terms of problems. You're absolutely right. We ask for input from this body through the chair's position from the finance perspective of what concerns might you have that are something you'd want us to put into the mix this year. Of course, we're going to test certain things every year no matter what, but that helps focus, especially if we know there are concerns, or if not concerns, just an area that you're curious to learn more about. So what we do in the area of receivables, because of the timing of how large Kent County is, the audit actually doesn't officially begin until several months after year end. And so a great many of your receivables have actually already been collected before we even come on site. Those are the easiest ones to test because we can just verify that not only was it receivable, it's been received. Those that have not yet been received is where we have to dig in a little deeper and make sure that we're looking for things. That can include confirmations, it can be tying things out to state reports. So we go through all of the receivables, we do a reasonableness comparison to prior year trends, we compare against current year collections, and then we look for any particular risk transactions that we want to dive into deeper. And all of that was done in our work papers, and none of it tracked any problems that we needed to report out here. So I can tell you it was looked at, and there are no comments simply because we didn't find any problems as part of that review.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Bulkowski.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Steve. Good seeing you again for this good report, both good in your work and then reflection of our work. That being said, percentages are squirrely animals. And so I don't know if you have your finger on the tab of, we're only 8% over for our target for our pension, but we're 29% under, which sounds like we're 3 times under than we are over. But what are the real dollars that we are under with the VEBA and the real dollars? And again, these are targets, I understand. It's not cash money unless the treasurer tells us otherwise in a few moments.
All right, that's an excellent question, and let's put that into context for you. So the net liability, the amount that you're under on your VEBA, is about $20 million. You can not look at page 142 and you cannot see it for yourself. And then the amount that you are over in the pension is actually $87 million. So what you have to realize is your pension is dramatically bigger than your VEBA. And so that 8% is actually 4 times better, better news than the bad news on the VEBA. And the reason VEBAs are historically underfunded is the concept of advance funding healthcare came to the government community decades later than the concept of advance funding pension. So you have much more history of advance funding, the one, and that's where you're in such a great financial position there. The other, it's fairly recent that you've begun that path, and it's amazing the progress that's been made. Right now, the state's benchmark for VEBAs is 40% funded, and you're at 70. Now, they're going to move that up over time. They expect everyone to improve. You can't stay at 40% forever, but you haven't, and it won't surprise me a bit to see you at 100% in a few years, which is excellent news.
All right. Mr. Wooden.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to first thank you again for this report, and I wanted to echo some of the comments that you made and Commissioner Morgan made, placing and Commissioner Sparks made, placing the note into context. One of the things that is also true about, as someone who sits on KCCA's governing board, as we review the different grants that they do receive, while this note shows a programmatic error, while we have continued to not spend down entireties of grants with from other funding sources at KCCA, home is the one where we have consistently continued to meet the deadlines to spend down these dollars and invest them into our community. So while I certainly appreciate the note and the corrective action plan to ensure that this does not happen again, I do think it's important within our context to demonstrate also the successes of this investment, of our use of the Home Investment Partnership.
Absolutely, and I'll just add one other piece of color that I think underscores what you're saying. When we audit grant expenditures like this, we're looking, did you spend the money on good things, and we're looking at, did you follow all the other rules? All the did you spend the money on good things part came out clean. We're not challenging any of the expenditures in the fund. There's just some additional programmatic monitoring that's supposed to happen on a particular cadence, and it didn't happen in this particular fiscal year. So that doesn't mean a dime was misspent, just that we have to tighten up some of the admin, and I know we're on track to do that, so that's great.
All right, any other questions, comments? If not, Jeff, you want to come up and take your kudos, or are you fine there? All right. Thank you so much for the report.
Apologize, we didn't have the full report. We didn't feel like 250 pages should be printed 19 times. So I think you did receive it electronically. If not, we'll get that out to you, sure.
Yeah, it doesn't look like most of this group read it last night, so. Thank you again. Second special order of business from our treasurer, Peter McGregor, will give us an investment report.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
Board of Commissioners, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Before I get into the investment report, just to Commissioner Belkowski, this investment report will not include pension and or VEBA. That's something that they don't let me touch other than sit on one of the boards, so.
For good reason.
Again, thank you for this opportunity to share the investment report with the commissioners, and hopefully this is 5 or 10 minutes of your time. It won't be long. There's not a lot of slides. And with me, I have my chief deputy and my financial supervisor behind me, that's Steve Orchard and Jennifer Slusek, which are right here. And the figures that you're going to see here are as of June 30th, 2022. So very recent. Just briefly, state statute dictates that the county treasurer follow Public Act 20. of 1943 as amended when investing public funds. So most municipal or all municipal treasurers in the state of Michigan are limited to those PA 20 restrictions, which are very tight. And that's for good reason, because these are public funds. They're not private funds. And so when you compare yields to some private entities or private funds and public entities, they're going to be quite much, a whole lot lower than what you would see out in the private investment market. The statute also requires that we have a written investment policy here, and it was adopted by this board, I believe, a few years ago in 2017. And that's the policy that helps my office and helps guide us through all preserving our public capital. And just as a reminder that this policy applies to all investments excluding our retirement funds, so the employee retirement funds. So the first slide is the slide principle, and I know a lot of you have probably seen this slide multiple times, especially the seasoned commissioners. And basically, the primary objective of investment for my office is through this acronym SLIDE, which stands for safety, liquidity, and then yield. With the primary objective on all this is safety. And it has to be in this order. We can't sacrifice safety and liquidity for yield, so it has to be safety first. And safety is of that principle is the foremost objective of the policy. And basically, my number one duty is to safeguard all public funds that the county has. The liquidity is important because we need to meet those maturity dates with the needs for the cash for our operations. So that's the next important part. And then yield is secondary compared to the safety and the liquidity. Next slide here, you've seen this before. This kind of helps us guide with the institutions that we are using for our banking needs and investment needs. So we use the Bauer Financial Bank star rating. 5 is the best, and it goes down from there. We don't invest with anybody less than a 4. I know this is probably very difficult to see, but if you can see this is broken out in by type and institution on our total dollar investments. There's 3 areas here. We have the government securities, pooled funds, and then the third are the CDs and money markets. The government securities are going to be more like your Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae. It's going to be your treasury notes and your treasury bills. The second part, the pool funds, are through organizations such as Michigan Class or MyLAF. These are more pooled investment management funds. And then the third piece at the bottom is the CDs and the money markets, which shows, you can see the number of banks that we do invest with. And our approach is we're willing to work with any bank that approaches the Treasurer's office in regards to investments, as long as it meets our criteria and those star ratings. It shows 21 banks here. It'll probably go down to 20, and it'll probably continue to shrink. But look, TCF Bank was purchased by Huntington, so those funds will probably be added together under the Huntington this time next year, if that all moves forward. And then the big ones continue to gobble up the small banks. So the number of banks on there will probably continue to reduce. I believe it was 23 banks last year. We still only are only working with one credit union. You see towards the bottom, Consumers Credit Union. And again, it's not that we don't like credit unions. Credit unions just haven't been approaching us. It's not in their wheelhouse, a lot of them, when it comes to investments. And just a note that the county is not investing more than 1% in any one bank, 1% of the bank's assets. And this has been a practice, a continued practice that I believe Ken had worked with. And this is just kind of spread those assets out as many financial institutions, as practical. I'll stop there to see if there's any questions, Mr. Chair, but here is that same information in a pie chart. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to see. You can see about half of our investments are in government agencies and pooled funds. The other half is in with CDs, money markets, with the banks. This is important to note, and I'll note it again in a few more slides, that we used to be, because in 2020 and 2021, the margins were so Spartan, were so low in every entity that just keeping those relationships with the banks were important. And we had almost 60% of our investments in banks. Now it's down to close to only 50%. And I'll talk about that in a moment, but I will continue on. So this is kind of that same number of $527 million, just broken down a little bit differently in dollars and then percentage on our investments. And this also you can see where that number at the top, that certificate of deposits, was probably about $100,000 more, $100 million more, excuse me, almost 60% of our investments this time last year. And it's because the banks, those rates are not moving at all, but in the securities, they are. So we're doing our due diligence, and and I'll talk about it soon, as the maturities are happening with a lot of these CDs, it's been normal for us, or routine for us, just to roll those CDs over. But it doesn't make sense when the banks are giving you 0.1 to 0.3%, and then in the security market, you're getting 2.5, 3, and above. So this is where yield is important. It's not the most important, but boy, it makes a whole lot of sense when you're getting that much more out of certain yields in certain areas. Again, this is that same information, just in a pie chart. Again, this is just, some people like to see it different ways. You can see that the CD market is definitely reducing as well as the money markets compared to the other areas in Treasury bills and Treasury notes. This is a snapshot in the last 6 months, and it kind of goes along with that message of moving our investment dollars from the banks into the securities. January, we were averaging 0.41%. 6 months later, we're almost at, 0.9, and actually probably by next month we'll be closer to 1%. So these numbers are moving in the right direction. This is a slide that I mentioned earlier. Just to note, you see January 2022, we had a little over 61% of our investments in the CDs. As of June 2022, it's just under 47%. And you can see those notes at the bottom that January 31 of 2022, we had 316 million, but then as of just a few weeks ago, it's 247 million in CDs, moving that money over into more of the treasuries of government agencies. And you can see those notes at the bottom there as well. And if that trend continues, more money will be moved over here. And all these are in short-term, very liquid type of markets. So most of, I would say 99% of our assets are probably in a year or less markets. And the reason why we don't go out 2 or 5 or 10 is because there's no difference in yield right now. I mean, you're getting about 3%, whether you're 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, 3 years, even 5 years. Actually dips down at 5 and goes up a little in 10. So it's better to keep it more liquid. Y'all are going to be spending some money here in the next 6 months, I have a feeling. This is to give you a little trend of where our yields have been for the past, I think this is almost 12 years. 11 years of trend since 2011. You can see they've been quite low. It looks like the high was 2019 at 2.2. And 2021 was not very good on our yields at 0.48. But if you look at 2022, we're already averaging, if you were to add all those up, about 0.6, and I think by the end of the year we'll be probably over 1% and getting closer to what we did in 2021, and hopefully we get closer to 2019. But you can see those years back in 12 and 13 and 14 were pretty pretty, well, nothing to write home about when it came to the earnings on our investments. This is through June 2022. This is the general fund and the total investment pool. These are our earned interest income. And again, starting to trend a little bit better through June, and these numbers will definitely be higher by the end of the year just because of the rates that are moving. This is something that really isn't part of the investment, and it's a little bit of what our last presenter kind of talked about. I feel that it's important that the commissioners kind of see where our fund balances are as of June 30th. When it comes to some of these major areas, you can still see the coronavirus relief funds. We're at about $124 million in there, but most of these are up. I think as of June, there's only one or two that may have, that are down a little bit. I think early childhood might be down. Lodging tax is up. General fund as of June 30th, just a slight tick down, but most of these are all higher than they were this time last year. Again, some people like to see this in a pie chart. You kind of see where the majority of our funds are, and you see the big slice there is the coronavirus relief funds and probably the DPW funds are the two biggest. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, Mr.
All right.
Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Questions? Yes. We'll start over here with, yes, go ahead.
You forgot my name this morning, Mr. Chair?
No, you don't have a name.
Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Treasurer McGregor. Just a quick question. I know that, you know, as your first slide indicated, that we're investing in things that are pretty secure and safe and sheltered from, you know, the whims of the stock market. But as some people start to predict that we, you know, may be heading into another recession, you know, how might that affect, or how does that affect the work that your office is doing, you know, looking toward the long term?
So when things are really good, we don't move much. When things are really bad, we don't move much. So it's kind of a dual-edged sword. So you can't get safer than U.S. government securities, whether you trust that or not. I mean, if our government, our federal government fails, we have bigger issues than what's going on with our Kent County's financial report. So it's probably, you can't get much more safe than this.
So I answered
Especially that trend going more towards the government than the banks, that's even makes it even safer.
I answered my question on the first end. We're protected as much as we can be.
Safety, again, safety is number one. It outranks anything else we do.
Sure.
And then Public Act 20 is also very tight guidelines. So even if I wanted to try and do it, I couldn't legally.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Green. Commissioner Bolkowski.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer, for your hard work on this. I love seeing the trends because a point in time is just a point in time. And so, yeah, it doesn't mean we're going up or down or wherever. So again, I love the trends. But then to the second to the last page, when back to kind of my follow-up, you had a lot of percentages and interest rates, but then that second to last page is real cash money, at least at that point in time. Are all these entities required to work with you? Like who has to work with you under Act 20 and be restricted by that?
Well, our policy, our investment policy, our financial investment policy with the county as well as Public Act 20 requires those who do work with us sign documents that say that they will work within the guidelines of Public Act 20. So banks, government securities, any fund managers, everybody, that's one of the first things we talk about is how we're going to be guided by Public Act 20. So do they have to do this? Yes, they have to work with Kent County or to work with any municipal treasurer.
I meant more at the cash balances by fund. I see Mr. Warren here from the Road Commission, and I see that you have just over $43 million in the Road Commission line there. Is he required to work with you, or is he chooses to work with you?
Well, it's more complicated than that. These are just, this isn't even part of the financial report. This just kind of gives you a snapshot of, like you said, of the amount of money. That's probably more of a question. We don't look at it with the different, we look at it more at a higher level, like how much cash do we have on hand and how quickly working with the finance department, what is how liquid do we need to be? You know, how much money will we have to have in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 months? And so working with the actual departments doesn't happen directly, but it's through our finance department.
Right.
So am I talking to the road commission? No, but I'm sure the road commission is talking to our finance department, letting them know what's going on, and then Jeff and my team are probably having they are having conversations about, you know, where we need to have the cash and when.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Chair. As the other younger commissioner with the blue suit on, I appreciate you remembering my name.
Ooh.
Sorry.
You used your time up.
I got a blue suit.
Yeah.
And I don't care if he remembers my name.
Okay, my innocent joke has thrown us completely off the rails. I apologize. Looking at the list of deposits and hearing your two comments about, one, this list is starting to shrink because of bank consolidation, and also the availability of one credit union, largely because many of them do not provide the kind of deposit services we need. Have we and many have not approached us, have we thought about being more affirmative and approaching them to see if that's something they can begin offering, and what kind of partnerships we can make with the other local governments to incentivize credit unions to offer business to us? And the reason I ask is, if we are seeing a larger trend in bank consolidation, I can't help but think that leaving more of our money deposits in credit unions will also retain that money locally and be used to expand money market availability in our region, rather than sending it to a national financial institution where our deposits could be used to support and expand opportunities elsewhere. I just wonder if that's something we can do to maintain our SLI principles and retain more of our deposits here in Kent County.
Yeah, we can try and do that. It's credit unions are a different beast. Obviously, that they're not really focused on government entities. They're more focused on the consumer. Banks or financial institutions in general are not knocking down doors to get more cash. They have so much cash right now. So, but it's more of a relationship, and every credit union that we speak with, we encourage them to, sit down with us, as long as they meet the criteria. There are some criteria that they just don't have enough. They don't meet some of that our criteria that's on that slide. But yeah, you're right. This is going to shrink, and eventually, at one time, there'll probably be 4 to 5 banks, but the banks are also competing with the government securities, and if they don't catch up, they're going to kind of miss this, and then they're going to be starving for cash, 2-3 years from now. So, but it's something that has baffled me why they haven't approached us. It must just be the consumer. So if you know anybody or have any family or loved ones that are part of some credit unions, have them give my office a call, and we'll see if we can't, start investing some of these dollars into additional credit unions. So I'm open to that, yes.
Do we know if CDFIs are eligible to be depositories for us, or because of their difference, does that disqualify them?
I don't know.
I'm not a financial expert enough to know. No? Okay.
Yeah, I can find that out, though.
Yeah. And then my other question, are there any institutions that have a 5 or 4-star rating that we could be sending money to that we're not currently? Or do we essentially, have we stretched ourselves out to as many of the institutions as possible?
No, there are a few that just don't care to work with us. And I have some examples. I'd rather not
Yeah, that's
point them
fine.
out here.
You don't
in
have to
public.
provide the example.
But there's some that just, I mean, their rates are even lower than 0.1. I mean, it's nothing. So it's not that we're not working with them because we don't like them, or they don't like us. It's we're not working with them because the yields are ridiculously lower than even other banks that are around. So this slide last year had a couple on here that actually had zeros. I took them out now because there's no reason to invest. It costs us more money to invest with them than to invest with them. That's how ridiculously low the yield was with them.
That makes perfect sense. And then my last question.
And some of them are pretty big banks too.
Yeah. My last question, this might be more for Mr. Dode. Looking at the investment income being at 181,000 and change as of the end of June, how is that tracking with our 2022 budget? I know you've mentioned it's likely yields have been lower than in the past, but I'm just wondering, are we expecting a shortfall in the line item for our 2022 budget?
He asked for you.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'm going to have to look that up. I don't have that handy. I don't expect a shortfall overall in the general fund as a result of this. We did budget conservatively because we knew the rates were going down, so.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Treasurer. I just need to circle back on Commissioner Bolkowski's question real quick. As far as the members or the departments, you have local units of government, that's voluntary. They come to us, right? And they want to invest their money here.
Yeah, we're one of 2 counties that actually pool for our local municipalities, the other one being Oakland. And that's a separate pool than it's part of these pool dollars you see here, but we pool them, and it's mostly townships.
Right.
A lot of the more rural townships that we pool their dollars with.
Sure, and I just wanted to point that out, that's voluntary, and they come to us and you invest their money, right?
Correct.
So that's a service we offer them through the Treasury Department, correct?
Yeah, and you're right, it is
So-
a service. You kind of look at my team and their eyes might roll, because
Well,
there are
it's an
people that
opportunity.
actually are professional, managers of these dollars. But I think our locals love it because of the relationships we have. It's easier to work with us than someone in a different town or a different state.
Got it. My second comment or question, so the earned interest, that's just return on investment, right?
Right.
The 0.4. I just like simple stuff, so,
So do I.
so that's
If we could just put this in colors, that would be great. Green and
I could
red.
follow it then. Now I forgot my last one because I'm getting old. But, so, can I just get a list from you of the municipalities that are participating with your investment pool? That's just an interest of mine.
Yeah,
So,
I can do that.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner LeGrand.
I know this is about investments, but my question is about one of the cash balances. The Coronavirus Relief Fund, I presume the ARPA money is in there. Do we still have CARES money in there as well?
I can't answer that question.
No. Okay, thanks.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Hennessy.
I'm following up on Commissioner Morgan's question on units that choose to participate with us. I don't see the airport here. Do they handle their investments, do they handle this separate from us?
I know we work with the airport when it comes to their bonding, their borrowing, but when it comes to their investments, I don't think we, part of the pool, yeah. So, yeah, some of them are, again, all this money is put together with one big umbrella, and then the accounting department between finance and our department can tell you how much, but I can't at this point. And if you need to know how much we're investing for the airport, I can.
Just that they're participating.
They are
Do they-
participating,
they do-
right?
Okay, I'm surprised there isn't a line item here that specifies their
Well, but
participation.
they're not, they're a separate entity than Kent County. They're an authority, so it's gonna be different than than our balances here.
Okay,
But we can get you those details.
thank you.
All right, Commissioner Sparks?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to echo the sentiments of Commissioner Wooden. That was my question about investing in the CDFIs, to see if that was a partnership that we could potentially make. But looking at the safety and the, well, it won't hit the yields, but knowing that $250,000 is FDIC insured, wouldn't that make sense for us to go with as many credit unions, even though we won't hit the yields, just to at least have that base of monies there?
Yeah, I mean, most of these CDs and banks or any institution we're using, it's just not practical to put $250,000 in as many banks as possible. It's just, there aren't enough banks to do it. So that's why we go into the government securities more, or some of the banks even offer these secured mutual funds that they have, which insure it for more. So I don't know if the credit unions have that capability, and that's why it's worth sitting down with them to see if they can do that. Because, yeah, again, it's protecting our dollars.
All right, anyone else? Okay.
All right, just one last thing. I want to thank you for your time, and also thank Steve and Jennifer. I mean, their commitment to this county is phenomenal, and I think Steve has been here for 25 years, probably longer than Morgan. And Jennifer's been here for about 12 years, so their commitment is awesome. So I want to thank them for their help on this.
Great, thank you. No opportunity to rebut that either, so, and thank you to your staff as well for all their good work.
Thank you.
All right, next item of business is public comment. If there's anyone here from the public that wishes to address the Board of Commissioners, you may do so now. Please identify yourself, and you have up to 3 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry, related to the agenda items only.
How you doing, everybody? My name is DeAndre Jones. Is this specifically for the agenda items?
Agenda items only.
All right, cool. I didn't see like the funding and the balance for affordable housing. I just remember hearing the audit. Affordable housing is the thing that you guys need to work on. I was just at a city forum yesterday, and I actually heard that homelessness and not actually having a home or being out in the streets actually improves the capability of somebody getting locked up or ended in jail or in the prison system. So I would like the county to take affordable housing. If we have any vacant lots, if we have a land bank to look into like tiny homes, 3D printed homes, different innovative ways to take people off the streets, because that's how people usually end up in the criminal justice system. So I would definitely like you guys to take affordable housing a lot more serious. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Again, agenda items only. That last one was close, but.
Good morning, Commission. That's loud. I'm here today to demand protection from the threat of forced birth that has fallen on our country, our state, our county. I think the leadership of our government has been absolutely shameful and abysmal. I'm speaking, of course, of Prosecutor Chris Becker, as well as Democrats like Commissioner Sparks, among others, who have failed to defend us from this, and we are actually come to demand that Kent County should embrace on-demand abortion, should seek to offer assistance as a sanctuary county for abortion providers. And we've also come to demand respect for the injunction against enforcing the 1931 abortion law that is currently on the books, which is antiquated and barbaric. It takes no thought of medical necessity, sexual violence, or the right to bodily autonomy. The idea of enforcing such a law is so absurd. I can only conclude that the intent is to intimidate pregnant people. And that is honestly, it's sickening and it's disgusting, and it's something that the leadership of our government should absolutely be doing everything they can to protect us from. It's like I said, it's a matter of liberty and bodily autonomy. It's a matter of safety. It's a matter of life and death for many people. And the fact that anybody could be so casual about what's happening right now and not take action is really upsetting. So I have really no choice but to come here or anywhere I can to speak on this issue because, like, as I said, the government is not speaking out about it. We've not heard any resistance to it. We've not seen anything from anybody so far. And this is a matter, it affects us on all levels, so it's local government as well. Kent County can be doing a lot to help people right now. We haven't seen anything. Our leadership has been quiet or they've been opposed to doing anything. And anyway, I'm sure I don't have to tell you about all the different, there's so much going on that I can't possibly tell you everything that I'd like to right now, but I'll repeat, I demand action on this issue. I demand protection from forced birth, and I demand Kent County be made a sanctuary county, and that we do everything we can to assist people looking to get abortions and medically necessary procedures. Thank you.
Thank you. So, just remind the public, this is public comment on items that are on the agenda only. There is another public comment later. I'll take the first two public comments as your general comments, so we'll move on. If anyone else has items on the agenda that you wish to address? If not, we'll then move to the next item, which is the consent agenda, and I will call on Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chair. I move.
We're going to have some problems here.
Support. I move the consent agenda of today's date.
And supported by Commissioner Morgan. Questions or comments on the consent agenda motion? I do have one. It is not a conflict for me, but I do disclose. I do have one comment, and that is with respect to the consumers' energy issue. It is not a conflict for me, but I will disclose that we do provide services to them, my firm. With that, if there's no other comments or questions, I will ask for the roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the motion to adopt the consent agenda, Commissioners Skaggs.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Bulkowski.
Yes.
LeGrand.
Yes.
Hennessy.
Yes.
McLeod.
Yes.
Sparks. Teal.
Yes.
Vice Chair Brevy.
Yes.
Commissioners Coleman. Burl.
Yes.
Ponstein. Bolter. Jones.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Antor.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Chair Steck.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 16 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. The consent agenda is adopted.
Thank you. I will now move to item number 8 and call on Commissioner Jones.
I move we go into closed session in accordance with the Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.268H, to consider material that is exempt from disclosure under another state or federal statute, the Freedom of Information Act.
Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Vice Chair Brevy. Discussion? No discussion. Roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the motion to open a closed session, Commissioners Skaggs.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Bulkowski.
Yes.
LeGrand. Hennessy.
Yes.
McLeod. Sparks. Teal.
Yes.
Vice Chair Brevy.
Yes.
Commissioners Coleman. Burl.
Yes.
Ponstein. Bolter. Jones.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Antor.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Chair Steck.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 16 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. We go into closed session.
We are out of closed session, and we'll move on to item number 9, starting with item 9A, and I will call on Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Chair. I move adoption of Resolution 87 of today's date. This is to approve funding for the cell door and lock replacement and DC-1 relocation CIP projects. They come to us from the sheriff's and IT departments.
It's supported by Commissioner Morgan. Any questions or comments? I see none, so we'll go ahead and do the roll call. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 87, Commissioners Skaggs.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Womack. Bulkowski.
Yes.
LeGrand.
Yes.
Hennessy.
Yes.
McLeod.
Yes.
Sparks. Teal.
Yes.
Vice Chair Brevy.
Yes.
Commissioners Coleman. Burl. Ponstein. Bolter. Jones.
Yes.
Morgan. Antor. Green.
Yes.
Chair Steck.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 87 is adopted.
Thank you. We'll move to item 9B, and I will call on Commissioner Bulkowski.
Thank you, Chair. I move Resolution 88 of today's date to add one medical social worker position to the Health Department for the Children's Special Health Care Services Program.
Is there support? Supported by Commissioner LeGrand. Questions, comments from commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Bulkowski.
Just to echo comments I made on Tuesday, this is Disability Awareness, or not, this is Disability Pride Month. Next Tuesday is the 32nd anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the historical note related to this is that, and I cringe when I say it, but Children's Special Health Care Services used to be called crippled children. So that, I don't know if our health director could come up and just talk about who are the children that are the focus of this? Because when the current title, Special Health Care Services, kind of just sounds like, I don't know, it's just like making sure you get your immunizations, you know? I mean, that, like, who really are the families and children that are impacted by this? And of course, I greatly support the work that this program does and expanding the capacity.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and thank you for the question, Commissioner Wolkowski. These are our children, the majority of which were born with a disability or with a serious birth injury. There are others who have acquired an injury in their early years, usually. And this is a program that works with those families, as we can all imagine. Getting the news that your newborn has a disability or has a severe chronic health condition is quite challenging for a lot of, especially parents that don't have any experience with that. So this is a program that really goes side by side with them and make sure they have the support, the navigation, the coaching, the counseling to be as successful as a family and to care for that child and give that child the best life possible. That the range of issues is pretty extraordinary. It's been expanded recently to include some manifestations of autism as well, and that's one of the reasons why the enrollment of the program has gone up pretty significantly in the past 4 or 5 years, and why we're asking for this position.
Anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Womack.
Yeah, do you know why it was changed from the name crippled? Well, I started school with braces and pumps on my leg, and I would hear that phrase crippled, and it would expand from the legs more to this feeling crippled in life. So as people start using certain words that were used in the 70s, a lot of people felt it was better not to hear, certain words and just how they affect children. Do you know why that name was changed? Was it because you expanded services, and do they still, because publicly, as Commissioner Bukowski said, you don't see the word crippled in commercials, you don't see it out there. And there's some other words I won't say when it comes to mental health that we've moved away from too. Just trying to find out more how the name was changed and different terms that I use now. Not that I look at the word crippled as a bad thing, just as a child hearing that about other people who were in classes I was in, I was just seeing how we changed that name.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Commissioner Womack. And I think your example and your story clearly articulates why we have changed and moved from words like that, and we can think of a few others that our society hasn't moved beyond because the stigma and the burden that was attached with those words was not helpful in any way to those and really isolated them from the rest of the community. And here, we're being mindful of the reality that these are children. They have some special needs, but they're still children in our community. They're not crippled. They have different needs that we need to make sure we're supporting them with so that they can have a healthy, happy life as well and participate in as much as they can in ways that they choose to in their life.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, if not, this does not qualify as a roll call vote, so all those that support the motion say yes.
Yes.
Those that oppose say no. It is approved. We'll now move to item 9C, and I will call on Commissioner Bulkowski again.
Thank you, Chair. I am happy to move motion 89 resolution of 89 of today's date, which is to add one medical social worker position to the Health Department for the Nurse Family Partnership Program.
Second. It is supported by Commissioner Skaggs. Any questions or comments on this motion? I do not see any. This also is not a roll call vote, so all those that support the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Those that oppose say no. It is approved. We'll now move to item 9D, and I will call on Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move Resolution 90. It comes from us from the Kent County Road Commission, and it's a transfer of property at Ruth's Park.
Is there support? Support. Supported by Commissioner, or Vice Chair Breedy. Discussion, questions, comments? Commissioner Breedy.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to stress how important this little piece of property is, and it will definitely make a big difference when traveling down 68th Street there. To widen that, it's a very narrow area, and as many of you have known, Caledonia has really grown, and there's a lot more people that like to come visit. So I think that's a great move to transfer this property.
All right, anyone else? My understanding is that this does not impact the operations of the park in any way. All right.
Correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Commissioner Hennessy.
This morning, we received some sketches of what this means. I haven't had time to take this in. Can it be explained to us?
The aerial photographs? Who wants to explain that?
Steve, would you like to?
I think the,
It is in the board packet.
it is not.
It is in the board
Okay.
packet.
There are two sets of the photographs of the street and then the demarcation of the area being taken.
The key one is this top one, I think. Because that shows the shift of, the
The road
expansion
shift.
of the easement will go away from the house that sits on the corner there. To the
Okay, so it doesn't
Away
affect
from it.
the house?
Correct.
Okay,
I assume it's so we don't have to affect the house, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's a shift in the right-of-way. The road will not consume that entire width. Okay, so we're moving the right-of-way to the south, which will allow us to build not only a better road, an all-season road with proper width and shoulders, but provides the opportunity to construct a turn lane. So for people turning left, either onto Thornapple River Drive to go to the north or turn south into the park entrance, it'll allow a safer movement of those turning vehicles. You're really gonna like it. It's gonna look great.
I'll trust you on that. Yeah, I was concerned because we've had some pictures of the house, but it's not going to affect that house. It's going to make
Correct.
it better.
This ensures that there won't be any impact on that residence.
Thank you.
Commissioner Morgan, do you?
Steve, also, you may want to take into consideration, or you may consider moving the entrance to the park too, to make it a little better.
Yeah, we'd be happy to work with the park.
Parks, yeah.
If they desire to move that, that'd be kind of outside our project, but if that helps.
I'm sure you can handle it, so.
We'd like to see that, Steve.
We enjoy working with our park department partners there, so.
Great.
Can't say that 3 times quick.
Commissioner Skaggs, are you done? I'm sorry. Okay, Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm looking at one of the aerial photos in the
in the original packet, and the yellow strip here up against the parking lot. So there's no sense here that the Parks Department is gonna have to, in the future, move this parking lot. Because
No.
we're giving you this, we're transferring you this property, but there's no intention to expand into that yellow area?
No, no, sir. The proposed right-of-way line will not go into that parking area. And incidentally, this matches up to the existing right-of-way limit to the east of that driveway.
Right, I see that. Okay, so
So-
no future moving of the parking lot for safety reasons or?
No, sir.
Okay, thanks.
And a correction, I don't think we're giving it, we get $1 for it.
Need consideration.
Any other questions or comments? All right, just clarifying, this is the Road Commission's project. We're simply being asked to give this so that we don't have to impact in your project, the road or the house on the other side.
That's correct.
Yeah. All right, any other questions or comments? If not, this is not a roll call, so all those that support the motion say yes.
Yes.
Those that oppose say no. It is approved. All right, we'll move to item E, 9E, and I will call on Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Chair. It is my pleasure to move adoption of Resolution 91 of today's date. This is to accept and execute a 2022 Regional Conservation Partnership Program Letter of Understanding with Ottawa County. It comes to us from the Office of the County Administrator.
It is supported by Commissioner Hennessy, or Sparks. I know, you're right next to each other. Yes, Commissioner Burrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, was this the property that had some, is this wetlands being impacted? What exactly is this property? I thought we had somebody, I don't know, maybe a month, 2 months ago. I don't know if she was talking about this property, but if you could give me a little more detail on
Matt,
that,
why don't you
please.
come up and see if you can, Matt Chang, if you can answer that question for us?
Yeah, no, this is not wetland. It's like 90% active farmland right now. It's 2 parcels in Sparta Township that are currently under crop management.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? If not, this is a roll call, so Madam Clerk, if you would take the roll, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 91, Commissioners Skaggs,
Yes.
Wooden,
Yes.
Womack,
Yes.
Bulkowski,
Yes.
LeGrand, Hennessy,
Yes.
McLeod,
Yes.
Sparks,
Yes.
Teal,
Yes.
Vice Chair Brevy,
Yes.
Commissioners Coleman, Burl,
No.
Ponstein, Bolter, Jones,
Yes.
Morgan,
Yes.
Antor,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Chair Stack.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 1 nay. The motion passes. Resolution 91 is adopted.
Thank you very much. That's the last of our resolutions for this morning. I'll now move to our second public comment, which is an opportunity of the public to address us on matters within our general jurisdiction. If you wish to address us and you have not already done so in the earlier public comment, you have up to 3 minutes. If there is. Good morning.
Good morning. Chairman Steck, my name is Tom Huddleston. I went to school with your son Brad, AKA Boo Radley.
Well, there's more than 3 minutes there.
Yeah, so we went to school together, K through 12, through Calvin Christian schools. And while I was there, I learned that freedom of religion means freedom from religion in equal portion. What is happening in our country right now is a right-wing attack on rights as a whole, not just limited to abortion, but transgender rights, police brutality. I mean, voting is under attack. It is painful, truly, to see this country descend into a swamp of, just, people in power getting what they want. I think that all of these things are It's not a partisan issue on any of these. This country is about freedom. That is truly what it was based on, and all these things have to do with, you know, the idea of positive or negative rights. And I think that if you want to put these positions into one camp or the other, I think that it is important to remember that we are free from others' religion. And I can't say that as a Christian that I support telling other people what they have to believe, that they have to start believing that life begins at a certain point when all along you're alive when you're born. Is consciousness assumed at fertilization? Are we trying to legislate that? Do any of you actually know when consciousness starts? Because nobody does. Philosophically speaking, that is something that has never been solved. It is one of the hardest problems currently being talked about in philosophy. To say that you or any of you have the authority to make that distinction, you're lying. You're not telling the truth about what you actually know, and you're placing a position. You're playing the politic game. It is so important to me that this county as a whole be a safe place for everyone, be a free place. And I think that, you know, how can we sit here? I mean, yeah, a lot of Christians in Kent County, sure, but they don't have a right to enforce that on anyone. And what will happen if more of these decisions being made by our Supreme Court are made without any input, any representation by the public? I think that's it.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Well, you kind of went into the general comments, but I'll give you one more minute. How about that? I'll tell you what, I'll give you one more minute if you promise that next time you come here, you'll maybe give us a little more decorum by turning your shirt inside out.
All right, cool. Sorry about my freedom of expression or the way I dress.
No, you have freedom. I'm just asking for a little respect. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. But my name is DeAndre Jones. I'm president of basketball operations for the Urban Youth Summer Basketball League. We have at least 100 kids playing basketball over there at King Park and at Camp Paul Park, but we had to shut down Camp Paul Park because we're understaffed. Not only do I operate the league, make sure everything is all right, make sure everybody is safe, but I'm also in one of the referees, so I have to make sure that these kids are being able to learn the game, have patience, not put down their, their teammates that may not be as good as them, and try to teach them valuable lessons of patience, because everybody might not be as good as you. Athletically, it's a development league, and I'm really putting a lot of great work into the community, reducing violence. I also wanted to talk about the esports tournament. I reached out to West Michigan Sports Commission. I had Katie, who handles marketing and events. She was on the meeting with me with GG Gaming and Click, and they have the organization Click has a contract with EA Sports. We are actually able to bring EA Sports here. I would just like to, because I'm one African American person, I'm speaking in front of a majority Caucasian board and a couple African American commissioners. If I say I can bring EA Sports to the city of Grand Rapids or King County, it might not sound unrealistic to some people, just to be honest, But if you actually reach out to her, she will actually tell you she was on that Zoom call because I asked her to get on the Zoom call with me just to confirm that we can actually, this is actually possible, that we can actually have an esports tournament, that we can actually contribute to this, that we can actually be one of the states and one of the counties that actually works on legislation that needs to happen to realize esports players as actual athletes, because it is an economic development side of it. It is actually data that the county could collect, the behavioral side and different things that the county can utilize to make the county better to understand this and be a leader in this space, because I want to be able to be a leader. I'm very innovative. If I was a county commissioner, I would do it myself. If I was a city commissioner, I would do it myself. If I was a state legislator or a federal government if I was in the federal government and I was a legislator, I would do the same thing because I know that this could really change the economy, but it also can create opportunity. It can create a lot of different opportunities. And I've been talking to some city police officers about esports. I'd like to get the King County sheriffs involved because I don't know how many King County sheriffs play video games, but I know a lot of city police play video games. And this is the way that we can bring people together in a creative way that's just usually not there. We had a couple of city police officers at the Martin Luther King Park while we were playing basketball, and they were able to be there and see the kids playing basketball. So, I mean, I'd like to engage the county in positive activities that can really be innovative, that can create economic sustainability, that can create jobs in a space that isn't really known in other cities. I'd definitely like the county to consider the proposals if my proposal happens to meet the ARPA requirements, and also consider the Urban Youth Summer Basketball League. Like, we're working with impoverished youth. We're working with kids that are at a disadvantage that usually don't have these great opportunities. And I'm making sacrifices every single day. Like, we didn't even have like the funding in our budget to even get these kids trophies for the hard work. But luckily, I went to a couple neighborhood businesses. I went to talk to them, and they actually gave me some money to get these trophies for these kids. So I'm really working hard in this county and my city to do as much as I can, and that work is documented. So please just consider my work. Even if you don't respect my work, I respect you, but just please consider these things because it's people that really care about this county and this city. Thank you.
All right, good. I think you got more than a minute, so maybe we get a tie next time, huh? All right, anyone else? All right, if not, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the administrator's report.
Just a couple items today. I wanted to thank Jeff and Marvin and staff again for just the excellence, and the rest of the fiscal services team. Just wanted to thank Jeff, Marvin, and the fiscal services staff just for the outstanding work that's reflected each year with our budget and audit processes, and just another outstanding result. Also, our life has been ARPA lately. I think, gosh, I don't know how many meetings I've been out in the community and in our offices with folks, and so it's been a great way to really get a good look at what's happening throughout Kent County. So I've appreciated that. Also, we did have a CIP work session yesterday. Not everyone was able to be there. If you do have questions, please shoot me a note, shoot Jeff a note. We'd love to address those, obviously, before this all comes up for approval later in the year. You also have a number of informational sessions over the next month and a half. So things like branding, reorg, airport, some of those things. So I hope you can make as many of those as possible. And finally, we'll have a press release going out later today. But I am pleased to say that Mark Rambo has accepted the Deputy County Administrator position. So we have two. We have Jenny and we have Mark Rambo. And he'll be starting August 29. And we'll look forward to his arrival on staff.
Very good. Thank you for that report. Trying to get ARPA out of my head, so it's not working. Let's move on then to reports. Anyone have a report? Yes, in addition to what was submitted in writing. So, Commissioner Bukowski.
Well, I just want to highlight what was submitted in writing because the usually so quiet friend of the court advisory committee, we had an awesome conversation with the undersheriff and the friend of the court concerning our sheriff department, use of force, de-escalation, and pursuit policies. So the minutes are actually really, really comprehensive. So please read those if you have any questions. And then, of course, because there are mental health professionals on that board, we also talked about how the sheriff has taken care of the mental health of the deputies. So it was a great conversation, though more to come. So I thank both the friend and the undersheriff for that great presentation and dialogue.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize. I fell out of the habit of submitting a written report, but I can at least briefly share that the Kent County Community Action Governing Board did meet last month. We discussed a number of topics, namely the executive shift and the 90-day review period to help refine our policies and practices to ensure that we can maximize the service delivery at that agency. Thank you.
Good. Any other reports? Commissioner Sparks.
Thank you, Chair. Just giving a report on the Area Agency on Aging. I always don't say that right, but Area Aging on that one. Okay, so we had a meeting, and I wanted to let everyone know that Commissioner Mass, who's I'm very fond of, has been diagnosed with cancer. And so it is public information, so I want to make sure that we keep him in our prayers and in our thoughts, because he's a really wonderful person and has served us for 20 years in the seat that I'm currently sitting in, so I just want to show respect for that. And right now, we're going through making sure that we, of course, work with the senior millage, but make seniors aware of the many scams that are going on right now, in protecting them from those scams. So that was what our last meeting last week was about. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the report, and sorry to hear the news. Any other reports? If not, we'll move on to the next item, which is miscellaneous. Does any commissioner have a miscellaneous item? Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you, Chair. A few weeks ago, my congregation, Eastern Avenue Christian Reformed Church, lost a really beloved member to a traffic accident out towards Ada. And in talking with the family afterwards, they specifically mentioned how wonderful their experience with the sheriff's Victims Advocates group was. And this was not a service I was familiar with, so I wanted to speak about it today. In terms of dealing with matter-of-fact details, which you don't even start to think about in a sudden and shocking death, they were dealt with so much compassion and so much help. They were just so grateful for the support, and I just want to thank the sheriff and the way I know that those are trained. They go through a lot of training, these victim advocates, and it just meant so much to that family to feel support in a time of shock and loss and grief. Just to know that those people are out there and supporting throughout the county in an instance like that. I was grateful to know it, and grateful to be able to share about it today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else a miscellaneous item? All right, if not, I guess I only have one item, and that is just to thank all of you for staying attuned and attention to the work of this commission. I know that we're going through the complexity and the challenges of a primary election, which has engaged many of you in a very deep way, and yet we've stayed focused on what we need to do, so thank you for that. And the next time we meet, I think we'll be past that primary, so thank goodness. With that, we do have as well another meeting after this to catch up on our ARPA status, and I think Dave is here. I thought I saw him in the background somewhere. So we'll take a short break after the adjournment motion, and then come back here for that work session. So I will call on Commissioner Wooden for an adjournment motion.
Thank you, Chair. I move to adjourn, subject to the call of the Chair, to Thursday, August 25th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. for an official meeting.
Support.
It's been supported. Those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed say no. It is approved. We are adjourned.